Welcome back to CityCast. Today's episode is our third installment of the climate change series on the podcast. Today, semester and resident students from the Climate Change Resiliency team will be talking to Beatrice Ekoko and Deepak Palanichami from Environment Hamilton. We'll start with their introductions, and then Beatrice and Deepak share their favorite outdoor spaces in Hamilton during the COVID-19 pandemic.
So I'm Beatrice Ekoko. I'm with Environment Hamilton for, I would say, almost 14 years. So I've been there for quite a while. I'm a senior project manager working on various files, and you'll hear more about that in the interview. As far as one of my fun places to go during COVID is, I'm very fortunate to be living close to the Hamilton Cemetery here up on York and Dundurn. So every time I feel like, okay, I just need to get out and have a quick walk, then I can do that and enjoy it and, walk over to the bay, to the stairs. So it's a lot of fun that way.
Hello, my name is Deepak. I'm a CityLAB alumnus and I'm currently interning with Environment Hamilton. One thing I like to do in my surroundings, there is the green belt, so I like biking around. It also connects with the Bruce Trail, so I like to go biking over there while maintaining social distancing measures.
So, moving on to the hot topic of climate change, according to both of you, what do you think are some of the most pressing environmental issues in Hamilton right now? And in what areas do you think the city is making good progress? And in what areas do you think they need to put in more work?
Sure, I can go first. So, in really thinking about, I looked at these questions and I thought a lot about what are the really pressing environmental issues. First thing that we have to think about is the fact that climate change is happening right now. It's happening alongside the pandemic that has been used maybe a little too much to say that, to kind of excuse reasons for why there is not a lot being done for climate change. But we like to say that these things they're happening at the same time. And so that's one of the big things that we're quite concerned that the speed is it's too slow. And I'm sure, Deepak, you can share some examples of cities that are still moving ahead despite the pandemic. The other thing that I find that really stands out for me is that we are just not taking we're not integrating the aspect of social justice, environmental justice, climate justice with the work with sustainability. And recently I was listening to a YouTube video with the Professor Julian. I think his name is Agerman. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he's with the Tufts University, and he was one of the first people to come up with that concept of just sustainability, and to how do we actually integrate it? Because these two concepts that we think about social justice separately from sustainability. That has been the way it has gone for all these years. And he wrote this like 15 years ago. He wrote this book, so you can really get a sense of like that is just not. It's missing. It's completely missing. I know that the city of Hamilton has been saying they want to start using the climate lens, but I'm also very interested in hearing about a climate justice lens. So that piece really is not there when you look at their plan so far to date. As well, there is really a need to be looking at an indigenous kind of integration here. That's lacking as well. And so these are some of the issues that I find that are still not there, even in all the conversations that the cities has been proposing. And just the other aspects that are quite concerning is that there's no. Oh, one thing I just wanted. I love this quote from Dr. Agerman: "Inequality increases our carbon footprint." Because I think it's very important that we talk about that. How inequality is, environmental quality and human inequality, they have to be integrated. And I want to also say something that really stands out to me, especially, is that Environment Hamilton has really been kind of highlighting this in some of our delegations, is that there needs to be a focus on responsible land use. We have to say no sport. We have to have a firm urban boundary. And the city needs to commit to that, because, of course, as we expand, as we grow into prime agricultural land, and how about food? We can't eat houses, right? So we have to be very, very aware of the fact that these important points are not there in any of the climate emergency plans that we've seen so far. I can go on, but that is one of the really key pieces that I think Dr. Diane Sachs, who was a former Environmental Commissioner of Ontario, really pointed out that Ontario's sprawl is the same. She equates it to Alberta's tar sands. That's how bad it is here. So we really, really need to be aware of the fact that, yes, we can, even if we build communities that are really wonderfully sustainable on the boundaries of the city like that and expand outwards, where it's going to end up being a bigger carbon footprint. So we need to really focus on, and to the credit of the city, they have done a good job at the secondary downtown plan, but that commitment to a firm urban boundary is still missing. There are other things, but I'll let maybe Deepak might want to jump in and say a few more things.
City could have been more active. Like, to name some examples, like City of Banff did a really good shared street concept, like construction. They used the COVID downtime to facilitate this construction because streets would be empty and stuff. And also Brampton did like a huge backyard gardening program, which I think they collected several thousand pounds of produce that kind of helped tackle their food insecurity issues. So in terms of most pressing, like some pressing environmental issues that I came across while working on my own project was lack of green space in the city. So during like extreme weather events, a lot of people have mentioned that they prefer going outside like parks and under trees to take shade like during extreme heat. So in urban areas, we are missing this green space.
Yeah, and Deepak, exactly. I think what you've just pointed out, we see that it's really highlighted in this COVID moment, where those who have access to green space, maybe because of neighborhoods that are more uplifted, better tree canopy, better parks, they're better off than those who are not. So we're working in neighborhoods such as Beasley and Gala, where the tree canopy is very, very poor, and green spaces are very few. It's like a concrete jungle down there, and so again, you can see the inequality that comes to the fore thanks to this pandemic. We can really see more than ever that we've been saying and shouting from the rooftops. So yes, we have an urban forest strategy, and now we have to really ensure that that canopy cover is distributed across the city in really equitable ways. So and also, just to add, one other pet peeve of Environment Hamilton is that, we've been saying for ages that, are we prepared? No, we're not. As far as we in this city, we have a lot of flooding. It's only getting worse because of the impact of climate change. So we're arguing that, we're behind on preparing for increased precipitation, despite dozens of other municipalities, and Deepak can talk to that, implementing stormwater fee structures that really will benefit residents and shift that burden onto the property owners that contribute the most to the runoff rate. So we do not have a fair stormwater structure. It's nothing fancy. It's, Kitchener has theirs for, I think, over 15 years. You've got these parking lots that are not paying their fair share of the stormwater fees, right? So these are some basic, simple things that can be done, as well as there's no we need to incentivize residents in those kind of programs and energy conservation programs. We need green development standards for buildings that are going up. We need solutions that are nature-based solutions. So we're looking at biodiversity as really an opportunity to mitigate climate change, really uplift that. We're in hotspot biodiversity, Niagara Escarpment, Challen Forest, all sorts of, the lakes. What are we doing to preserve and uplift those natural settings that we have? Right? And one of my personal, pet peeves as well is that we're not looking at good green jobs. We need jobs that will benefit people, planet, and economy. So we have these opportunities through all kinds of energy conservations or to create these jobs. And I believe the city really needs to act upon those initiatives, so those ideas.
I think you definitely bring up some great points, especially about looking at climate change through a social justice lens that focuses on equity. It makes sense when you realize that climate change affects some of the most vulnerable in our city, and climate plans should be addressing and focusing on how they can better help those communities. And also just realizing that if plans are made for the most vulnerable in the city, then it will positively impact everyone else irregardless. I believe we had a specific question regarding equity and climate change from one of our CityLAB students, Henry.
Yeah, thanks, Ananya. Just to give a bit of context, throughout our semester, we've spoken to Jeanette Smith, city manager, and then also MP Matthew Green, who have both had kind of different perspectives on the idea that you earlier spoke a little bit earlier about, Beatrice, about the urban expansion, urban sprawl, and what that means to a community. So I guess my question would just be, like Ananya was talking about, is there a way to um, coincide this current system of city management with an environmental message and with environmental sustainability, or will there need to be fundamental changes within how the province and the city function to actually come to any meaningful change in that respect?
So, in terms of urban sprawl and how the provinces, how the city is responding, and I'm sure you might have heard about the attacks on the environment that the Ford government is doing right now with the conservation authorities and such, right? Massive, just kind of deregulating of our protections, and we have to really work together, and the city has to be very strong. And to their credit, they did when it comes to conservation authority, they were very strong on that aspect too. So I feel there's room for all levels of government, but I think that the only thing we can do as residents is we have to really, really be pushing our local governments, especially, to do the right thing. So we need to educate ourselves. At Environment Hamilton, we're trying to prepare people to delegate, to use the tools that we have at hand, such as the Environmental Bill of Rights, to registry, to really use that, to know how to access it, to really be more civically engaged. So I'm not sure if I've answered your question, but feel free to ask me some more questions.
No, that was very helpful. Thank you. I didn't know about the current work that's being done. It just definitely, it seems like there's at some levels, contradiction to the way cities are funded and work, and also trying to create sustainability.
Well, and I agree. I would say that there's a contradiction, a massive contradiction here in Hamilton, that we want to project ourselves as this city that's, this formerly known as an ambitious city, that's like, innovative, bringing new people, art, this and that, technology. But at the same time, we have these really, really harmful policies. I'm even thinking of something like the current truck route system that's in network that's being reviewed right now, and the tensions that we're feeling, where we're saying like this is not helpful. It's polluting. We've got trucks going through neighborhoods, very harmful to the environment, harmful to the well-being of the community, the health of people. Really, for sensitive land use, a lot of our project work that I'm focused on right now, Friendly Streets, is looking at how can we improve walkability and pedestrian safety and quality of life. Are we looking at quality of life? Well, that's one of the big questions. What kind of quality of life do we have here in the city? And when we're talking about bringing in, not to say shut down industry by any means, but let's make them responsible. Let's look at diverting trucks and let them stay, these heavy industry trucks, stay on the routes that they're supposed to be going, and not shortcutting through neighborhoods in the city. And because it's permissive, that's how it is. That's how it's set up here in Hamilton. And that's what we have a lot, or the emissions that are coming out from a lot of the industrial lands that, really by now they have the technology, they shouldn't be allowing, such noxious, harmful, cancer-causing chemicals. So I feel that there's a lot there really is a contradiction, as you pointed out, between what people want and what is actually happening.
I had a question for both of you regarding a point you brought up about mobilizing residents and getting them on board and empowering them to keep the city accountable. So can you tell us about the projects that you're working on with Environment Hamilton and how you're engaging with residents to get them involved in climate action work?
Okay, so the project that I'll talk a bit more about the project that I'm working on. So currently, I'm working on the Climate Ready Hamilton project. So it's a network of faith-based organizations where people can go to during extreme weather events. Like for example, during extreme heat or extreme cold event, they can go to faith organizations to take shelter. Yeah. So in terms of how we are involving people, so through the connections of Environment Hamilton, I've been reaching out to several key community members, like with those who are involved with faith organizations and in the community, to like establish a network. Like it could be establish a network where they can provide support during these extreme weather events. It could be like they are involved with an organization, like a church, for example, which could act like a resilient hub during extreme weather event, or they could provide resources like checking in on the most vulnerable population that they know that they are connected to during extreme weather events.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So, to answer your question about how do we, what are some of the ways that we engage, and what are who are the stakeholders that we engage? We absolutely look to engage the most, and I like to say, made vulnerable. This is something there's one person on Twitter, that Ahmed Ali. He said something that really made me think. It was like, when we say vulnerable people, it's actually the policies that have made people vulnerable. So I like to really use that idea because it's true. And so as an environmental group, we really believe that no matter where you live, you have a right to clean air, to clean water, to clean environment, and so we really seek to find out, to talk to people who are those people made vulnerable. So who are they? When it comes to the Friendly Streets project, we're going to go to neighborhood associations, and we'll go to, I'm thinking of in Lansdale, when we go to Eva Rothwell, we've talked to seniors directly. We had to use Google Translate to talk to people in Mandarin. We want to really hear from people. Okay, how did you get here? How is walking down this street? What is missing? What did you need? Is it better lighting? Is it snow removal? That's a big one right now. The city had through their Engage program, they had that survey, and many people said yes, they're willing to pay a bit more taxes in order to have the sidewalks cleared of snow, because it's a mobility justice issue. And of course, now the city said, well, we're going to talk about it next year or something, so delaying it. Meanwhile, they literally sought the engagement. So that can be a bit frustrating. So we definitely, that's one of our efforts, is to really look to uplift those voices. And right now, an example would be with the Friendly Streets project is really, really working to engage people in the community, people of color. How friendly are the streets for people of color? Are they friendly? Where are they not friendly? What will actually be a safe place for you, or an enjoyable place, a sense of where you actually feel that you belong? And this is a big new concept for me as well, that adding to the work I'm doing is, which I again derived from this Julian Agerman's talk, the idea of the concept of belonging. If you don't see artifacts, if you're an Indigenous person and you don't see your culture represented on the streets, do you belong? Do you actually feel that you belong? If you're a person of color, if you're a trans person, if you don't see anything that uplifts you and who you are, how welcoming are those streets? How friendly are they? And that's just the fun aspect of the streets. So we're looking at, as I said, how safe is it to travel at night, to travel in the day? We just learned of the tragic death of a young boy on Rhymewell Road, one of the areas that Friendly Streets was working in, close to on the mountain. He was hit by a pickup truck while crossing the street with a crossing guard. So it's a question of street design too, right? So we're really looking at those really talking to people that are actually on the streets, that are using this and not driving through them. So so we reach out to, as I was saying, with the Friendly Streets project, we reach out to these associations, neighborhood associations as well, business improvement areas. So with the Friendly Streets project, we have been working with the General Hospital to create a hospital zone around the General Hospital since the project started in 2017, and really looking at safety for pedestrians and cyclists. So we succeeded in getting a signalized pedestrian crossing at one area where actually our ED's father was hit by a car trying to get to the hospital. So there's pedestrian crossing there now. We've got a signed wayfinding route that's coming in soon to hospital from Ferguson Street up to through the campus. We've been planting with other groups. So we work with, really look to collaborate. We've been planting trees with Trees for Hamilton, the Hamilton Naturals Club, Beautiful Alleys. So a whole steering committee of people. We're getting residents involved to make this area a really friendly, pedestrian, safe place to move through, both for people coming into the hospital and for residents. And so again, those industrial trucks are going up Wellington and Victoria. They need to be diverted, where they need to go, because this is a hospital zone and they are not supposed to be doing that. So these are some of the examples of how we reach out. We try and find the language that really resonates with whomever we're working with. So for instance, when we were beginning to work with the hospital zone to say, okay, we want to really make it safer for more people to walk in this area and not feel like they're going to get hit by vehicles, we had to kind of help them understand that the journey begins beyond the hospital doors, the health journey. So you have to kind of say, how did you get here? And think about it. And that really resonated. They're like, oh, yeah, they could understand that language. So we got to look for language that really makes sense. Right now, we're struggling with the Dr. Davies School in the Beasley neighborhood on Wilson Street, where we're trying to get more parents and children. We're starting to look at maybe getting children to talk about the fact that it's a very, very dangerous place to walk to school. The sidewalks are tiny, very, very narrow. The city has agreed. The industrial trucks the school is hemmed in on both sides, like both on Wilson and Cannon. And this is a sensitive land use area with a park, with a community center, with a daycare, with a school, with a medical center. And the speed in the trucks, it's just terrible. So we are trying to talk to the principal there. We've been reaching out to the city, like the general manager, the councillors. So we really do, staff is aware of the situation, but we get a lot of pushback because, it's just, for whatever reasons, we've been hearing it's because they need to study the LRT traffic patterns before, that was when we were going to have LRT. Now it's still on hold because of, anyway, so you can see that there's a lot of, we have to look at all kinds of angles and all kinds of ways to get in, to get the results that we want, which is just like a better, safer community for everybody, right? So yeah, I think I've kind of gone off. I'm not sure where I am here. We were talking about engaging as well. There's one other thing I wanted to mention, and that's the biodiversity action plan that Environment Hamilton and the Hamilton Naturals Club have partnered together to. Over a year ago, we started kind of thinking to ourselves, okay, we have a climate plan, we have a climate crisis, but we also have a biodiversity crisis in tandem. And we're seeing, okay, we're talking about climate change, we're not talking about the rapid global decline of biodiversity, which is just as alarming as climate change, and how these two we have to look at them together, just as we have to look at justice, right? All these things are intertwined, interrelated. And we were realizing that because we have a pollinator paradise project that we share, and that is really to kind of increase habitat for pollinators, also obviously declining. But then we thought to ourselves, well, let's go further. Many cities are looking at biodiversity action plans to protect not only their habitats and the nature, but also as solutions to climate change. So to green infrastructure, helping grey infrastructure. And that's where I think the public, and in fact, Arlen was on our biodiversity group prior to he being redeployed to do this other work. So the idea of really looking at what we have, if we were to pay for for environmental, like ecological services, we would be paying trillions of dollars as cities, right? So it's so important to have healthy biodiversity, not only for us as human beings, but for its intrinsic value. So we've been engaging through the Pollinated Paradise projects, residents, faith communities, everybody, businesses to plant habitat. And now we're going, okay, let's think bigger. Let's think about how we can really create a biodiversity action plan that actually will, across departments, that will really use that lens as well, in making our city more resilient to all these, whether it's climate, pandemic, whatever it is, let's make it healthier.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of CityCast. Join us next week as Beatrice and Deepak tell us about the successes and challenges of the working relationship between Environment Hamilton and the city. As always, thank you for listening to CityCast.